New details have emerged about Donald Trump's talks with Vladimir Zelensky in Washington on October 17. As many sources have already stated, during the meeting on Friday, Trump kept repeating the points made by Vladimir Putin, which he had voiced to him during a phone call. The day before, Trump was urging Zelensky to accept Putin's terms, otherwise he allegedly said Putin would destroy Ukraine. Trump assured Zelensky that Putin hadn't even started fighting at full strength yet, and that it would be better for Ukraine to surrender. The meeting between the presidents of the United States and Ukraine often turned into a shouting match, and Trump was constantly, swearing. But the most shocking thing, and what is now being discussed not only by sources but also personally by Volodymyr Zelensky, is that Donald Trump's advisor, Steve Vitkov, was strongly persuading Zelensky to give Donbas to Vladimir Putin, since Russia, attention, held a referendum there and even included this region in its constitution. And therefore, in Vitkov's opinion, this is a concrete argument in favor of the fact that this is now Russian territory. Zelensky replied simply, "And if Ukraine now adds a couple of Russian regions to its constitution, then Vitkov will also demand that Russia hand over these territories to Ukraine." But unfortunately, that's not all. After the meeting, European allies quickly voiced public support for Ukraine, and this was a very troubling sign. But today, there's even more cause for concern, because several reputable publications, citing their sources, are reporting that Trump has basically turned his back on Ukraine. He wants Zelensky to surrender to Putin, because he promised the American president some kind of economic deal right after the war. My name is Pechiy. Today is October 20th on the calendar. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to this channel. Please give it a like, write any comment under this video, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechiy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. It says there, support the Pechiy channel, choose any format that's convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you give. So the day before, Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that Trump's special envoy Steve Vitkov was putting pressure on him regarding the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Donetsk region, arguing that Russia included Donetsk region in its constitution. The president of Ukraine tactfully avoided mentioning Trump's pressure. Let's focus on Zelensky's statement about the Vitkov region, and I'll explain what this is about. So Zelensky, who recently returned from Washington, continues to make statements today. That's quite a long and detailed quote. I told him, meaning Vitkov, very clearly that there is a certain misleading impression. The Russians say that they supposedly held a referendum among Russians in Donbas and that they supposedly want to join Russia. But first there was an occupation, and then something uncontrolled and illegal happened, which they called a referendum. Mr. Vitkov says that this is included in the constitution. That's why I explained to Mr. Vitkov once again that if tomorrow Putin adds something else to his constitution after the war ends, we would again have to withdraw from some territory. And if I add, for example, 2 regions of the Russian Federation to the constitution of Ukraine, would they withdraw from those territories? From our negotiations, it's clear that if Ukraine accepts what's been put on the table, that is a bad territorial solution, then they will try to resolve everything else without us. For example, in our conversation about the ceasefire, they repeated the Russian narrative again that we would supposedly be preparing for an offensive, that supposedly we shouldn't be given a pause. I said, I just don't quite understand how we would violate the security guarantees signed with you if we actually have a real end to the war. As an example, South Korea, which has security guarantees from the United States of America and has become a developed country, while North Korea is still North Korea, and there is no final document there, no final peace agreement. Who could violate the security guarantees from the United States? Who would be their own enemy? We understand Steve Vitkov is just relaying Russia's message, not expressing his own view. Well, at least that's what he says. End of quote from Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky also said that after his last White House meeting with Trump, Vitkov stayed until the end. That's it. It's unclear whether Putin offered to give up some territories in the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions, or if he simply agreed not to advance further in these areas. And what's interesting is that Zelensky insists he asked this question to both Trump and Vitkov, but neither of them could answer. So, just like with Alaska, Vitkov and Trump again failed to understand what Putin was really offering, because now Vitkov insists that supposedly Putin is saying, let Ukraine give me Donbas and I'll give back Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. But what does give back even mean? Will he withdraw his occupying Russian troops from the seized territory, or does he just mean he won't advance into areas that were never under Russian occupation in the first place? So accordingly, he can't give anything back at all. But what's interesting is that neither Vitkov nor Trump answered this question. What exactly do they mean? And Zelensky did say that Donald Trump heard Ukraine's position about the impossibility of giving up Donbas. Let me point out right away why Steve Vitkov is in the spotlight right now. The morning after Trump and Zelensky's talks, the Washington Post published an article claiming Vitkov told Zelensky that Ukraine should give Donbas to Putin and recognize it as Russian. After all, Russia held a referendum there and has already included this region in its constitution. The same article stated that supposedly Putin, quote, is ready to give up parts of the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions in exchange for full control over the Donetsk region. Naturally, as you understand, Putin is not going to concede anything regarding Ukraine. His position has not changed at all. This is called demilitarization, denazification, and eliminating the root causes of the crisis. In short, Ukraine's unconditional surrender. And he does not accept anything else. Today, Peskov has already stated that they don't care at all about any peacekeeping efforts by Donald Trump. They want all of Ukraine, that's it. Well, in the same article, the Washington Post writes that Vitkov pressured Ukraine, the Ukrainian delegation, and Zelensky personally on Friday, urging Ukraine to give up the Donetsk region to Russia, since the region is mostly Russian-speaking. Zelensky confirmed this, saying yes, Vitkov, well, as Baran notes, there's a Russian-speaking population, and Putin already held a referendum and added it to the Russian constitution. Well, so what now? Just like that, apparently we need to respect the dictator and give him the Donetsk region. I had a thought about this today. I'd like to ask Vitkov, in the United States of America, does everyone speak English? Is it really true that in the United States of America there aren't entire states that speak, for example, Spanish? It's worth considering, and there's some good news for Ukraine. Marco Rubio will now oversee all negotiations from Budapest onward, replacing Steve Vitkov. It's also important to note that Trump himself has not publicly raised the issue of concessions on Donbas, neither after his conversation with Putin nor after his meeting with Zelensky. So he doesn't talk about it publicly. In closed meetings, yes, but not publicly. After the meeting with Zelensky, Trump emphasized that both sides should stop at the current front line. And this position was confirmed and supported by the Ukrainian president as well. But as you understand, there is also a non-public part. The Financial Times reports that Donald Trump, during a tense White House meeting on Friday, urged Volodymyr Zelensky to accept Russia's terms to end the war. He warned that Vladimir Putin said he would destroy Ukraine if it did not agree. According to informed sources, the meeting between the presidents of the United States and Ukraine repeatedly turned into an argument, with Trump constantly swearing. They added that the United States president threw aside the maps of the front line in Ukraine, insisted that Zelensky hand over the entire Donbas to Putin, and repeatedly repeated the points voiced by the Russian leader in a phone conversation the day before. Although Trump later approved freezing the current front lines, this heated meeting apparently reflected a shift in the United States president's position on the war and his willingness to support Putin's maximalist demands. The Financial Times reports that Zelensky and his team went to the White House seeking escape to persuade Trump to provide them with long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles, but the United States president ultimately refused to do so. But two other publications, Politico and Reuters, are reporting today that Republican supporters of Ukraine in Congress even discouraged Zelensky from meeting with Trump on Friday. They said after the conversation with Putin, this is really not the best time. Here's another quote from the Financial Times. According to European officials who were briefed about the meeting during Friday's session, Trump apparently took many of Putin's points literally, even when they contradicted his own recent statements about Russia's weaknesses. For example, Trump told Zelensky that Putin told him the conflict is a special operation, not even a war, adding that the Ukrainian leader needs to make a deal or else he faces destruction, Trump told Zelensky that he is losing the war, warning if Putin wants to, he will simply destroy you. End of quote. And this moment is very important. And the fact that Trump really said this at a closed meeting was confirmed by Zelensky himself, who gave an interview to the American channel National Broadcasting Company News on the same day. And he deliberately emphasized, quote, "We are not losing this war, and Putin is not winning. His army is currently in a weak position." There you go. The Financial Times further describes the situation at the meeting as follows, quote, "At one point during the meeting, the United States president pushed aside the Putin frontline map provided by Ukraine and said he was tired of seeing the map of the front line in Ukraine over and over again. 'This is the red line. I don't even know where it is. I've never been there,' said Trump, according to sources." At the closed meeting, Trump also stated that Russia's economy is doing great, which sharply contrasts with his recent public statements in which he urged Putin to negotiate because his economy would collapse. But on Thursday, Putin made a new proposal to Trump, according to which Ukraine would give up the parts of Donbas under its control in exchange for small territories in two southern regions, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. That is the ones that the Russians don't occupy anyway. But they present it all as if they are generously giving up these territories. You see, there's bargaining going on over Ukrainian land. But Zelensky clearly says that it's still unclear what exactly the Russians are ready to give up in these regions. What is it? From what they don't control anyway? Or maybe they need to be driven out of there? Moreover, 3 other European officials informed about the discussions in the White House confirmed that Trump spent most of the meeting lecturing to Zelensky, repeating Vladimir Putin's arguments about the conflict and urging him to accept the Russian proposal. According to one of the officials, after the meeting, Zelensky was extremely negative, adding that the European leaders were not optimistic but pragmatic in planning the next steps. And that's exactly why the European leaders immediately made a coordinated statement about continuing their support for Ukraine. Nevertheless, Zelensky told journalists after returning from Washington, quote, "We have come closer to the possibility of a possible end to the war. This doesn't mean that it will necessarily end, but President Trump has achieved a lot in the Middle East, and riding that wave, he wants to put an end to Russia's war against Ukraine." I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's it for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.